but more specifically, they're there to protect each of you as members of the public. If you go through the rules and look through the rules that are in there, they're almost uniquely designed to create a process that will give people notice, that will give them transparency, and give them fair information that is accurate. So the minutes have to be of a meeting have to be accurate. The bill analyses that are put together, they can't be misleading. They have to be accurate. There's 5-day posting rules. Those things need to be put up. So whenever there's a committee hearing on concealed carry, like there is today, folks need to know a certain amount of time in advance that they can come down here to Austin and come speak on those things. So as you go through the rules, or as you go through, not through the rules, I don't expect you to sit down and flip through the book, but as you go through the process and you see things happening that you feel are either misleading or unfair, or they don't give you enough notice, something comes to you as a shock or a surprise, oftentimes that can in fact be a violation of the rules. Just a week ago, there was a hearing on sanctuary cities set on a Friday afternoon for Monday morning. The Democrats obviously, even though they claim these sanctuary cities don't exist, they didn't want to rally up all of their people to come oppose the legislation to ban the thing they claim doesn't exist. And so they went to their folks in Houston and they said, come down to Austin on Monday and come testify. Well, they said, gosh, you got to give us more time. And they were right. So on Monday morning, the senators came forward and said, you're moving too fast. There hasn't been enough time for this committee meeting to be posted. And so that same rule that protected those folks who wanted to come testify protects each of you. So if you see things happening in the process that are misleading, things that are happening in the process that are unfair, you feel like you've been taken advantage of as a member of the public, you haven't gotten a notice that you're required to get, come talk to somebody like me or talk to your representative. Obviously, you probably don't want to talk to the author of the bill or something, some opponent on a political issue, but find a friend and tell them about it, and then we'll be able to look into those things. The other major point that I've been talking about is the issue of the state's lobby rules. When you come to Austin as a citizen to speak on an issue you care about, you are not a lobbyist. Okay? You're an engaged citizen, you're petitioning your government. That's not lobbying. A lot of people want to describe, oh, well, this is the Citizens Lobby Day, or we're citizen lobbyists, or we're the Tea Party grassroots lobbyists. You're not a lobbyist. Lobbyist is a hired gun. Lobbyist is a person who sells their information, their associations, their relationships to third-party groups. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's a different thing than you coming down and speaking on issues you care about. That said, there are people in government who like to shut people who are effective up. They want to use the rules that exist against people like you and me. And so I wanted to give a bit of advice about those rules. I won't go into all of the details, but there's 2 simple rules here. Don't take money to come speak down here without talking to a lawyer first. So if you're getting paid to be here, come talk to a guy like me. We'll figure out whether does that make you a lobbyist or are you not a lobbyist? The other thing would be don't give free gifts to legislators, staff, those kind of people. That's what I call the no fajitas rule. You're much more effective if you go in and talk about issues you care about. It is not necessary to buy everyone a plate of fajitas in order to advance your cause. So I would generally just say stay away from that. There's certain dollar amount limits. How much can you make? How much can you spend? You actually can go to a certain amount without having to register, but it's in the hundreds of dollars, and I would just greatly recommend don't do it, A, without talking to a lawyer first, B, just don't do it at all. So with that, that's my extremely truncated version of my presentation that I'm usually more long-winded on. What questions do we have? Did I miss anything, Mike? Questions? Anybody? Oh, Adam.
As far as the rules in the process and the process being designed to kill legislation, while that can be very frustrating for us to see things we like not get through the process, do you think on average that ends up, even with the legislature as it's currently constituted, killing more bad things than good things?
I want to challenge the premise a bit, and this is something I'll probably have a better answer on, but it won't be an answer until this summer sometime. I am not sure that this grand idea, more things die than pass, is entirely true. There are multiple. There are a lot of times there's like 7 or 8 versions of a bill filed. You know, obviously they're only going to advance one of those bills, but they're, you know, the 7 or 8 just kind of hang back, and the authors are happy with it. They passed their bill even if, you know, it's got somebody else's name on it. There's amendment processes, putting bills as amendments onto other legislation. Lots of legislation passes, and a lot of this idea that things get held back is that kind of surplusage of multiple versions of bills, that kind of thing. I will say this, if you don't have majority support for your idea, if there's not 76 votes for your thing, then it usually doesn't move. I mean, it just isn't going to get the kind of interest. And so sometimes people file bills just to test the waters or to begin to make a case. Those kind of things don't pass, but I don't think the members think that they'll pass. There is the local and consent calendar, which is where you know, things it's supposed to be for either, and it's, people misunderstand it, it's for local bills that, you know, only pertain to one area of the state, and that's kind of fudged a little bit to be these things that are called bracket bills, which the craziest one I saw yesterday was a Senate bill that says, you know, this hotel tax only applies to a county, a city of 12,000 or less that holds the Wild Wild West Fest. You know, basically, what I worry is any city that's under 12,000 can now hold a Wild Wild West Fest and have a tax, but you know, things crazy like that, it's usually done more with population brackets. You know, a city between 10,000 and 30,000 can do X. The idea is, you know, small towns might need to do something different than big towns can do, but those kind of things will pass on the local calendar. There's also consent items. The idea is everybody agrees this is perfectly fine, there's nothing wrong with the bill, and stuff passes that way. A good, I don't know, somewhere around half of the legislation that passes through that. If you've never seen it, it looks like I joked a little bit earlier about an auctioneer. It is like an auctioneer, literally rolling through bills 20 seconds a clip, 30 seconds a clip. So I don't know that I entirely agree with that. Does it kill more bad bills than good bills? It kills, the process does stop legislation that there's not majority support for. But I don't know that it actually ferrets out bad bills. I think a lot of bad legislation passes, particularly bad but not big legislation passes a lot through the legislature. So that would be my halfway answer. I'll have a better answer for that in the summer. I'm gonna look at that question in detail.
You know, we've now hit the date at which this legislation can be heard on the floors and moving out of the chambers. There are opportunities, as I understand it, for members to take legislation that, because of its high number or their relationship with the committee chair or whatever, might not see the light of day in, you know, as full legislation. Explain how legislation that's filed still has life as amendments.
Okay, that's a good point. It's a good topic. People always want to do this. They want to do the amendment thing as a way to move their idea that's stuck in the communism committee. You know, it can't get out. How do we do this thing? And
State affairs.
Touche. So no, it's just run by really bad people. I don't know that Byron Cook's a communist. Communists believe in things. So the biggest point on amendments, and this is something that everybody who's dealing with the legislative process, thinking about how can my idea be an amendment, needs to understand, is the idea of germaneness. There's a couple of rules that restrict what can be added to a bill. One great thing we have in this state is called the one subject rule, sometimes misnomer called the two subject rule. It comes from the Texas Constitution. It's also codified in the rules. It basically says you can't just mishmash lots of things together that have nothing to do with each other. It's unlike Washington, D.C. We can't put, you know, teapot museums on military bills, you know, whatever. The bill has to be one subject. Now, it can be one little subject, or it can be one super broad subject. It could be, you know, dealing with the regulations on the such and such building at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, that specific, or it could be we're going to deal with ethics, okay, or we're going to deal with agriculture. It could be some massive subject. But so you got to be one universe of concept, either small or large, one subject. And then when you add an amendment to it, there's a couple of rules on that. One, you can't change the original purpose of a bill. Sometimes people will bring forward a bill and they'll say, the great example that's in House practice is the fire ant eradication bill. Fire ant eradication bill comes to the floor. You know, let's say you're an animal lover, you wanted to have ant colonies all over the place. So you amend it to change it in the other directions. It's like foster care for fire ants or something like that. The exact opposite direction. That would be changing the original purpose of the bill. You can't do that. Or for example, saying we're going to make such and such a legal, and then you go, well, let's add IL, let's make it illegal. You can't do that. That's basically the bill's been moving in this direction, and then you start going the other way. You can vote against it or defeat it, but you can't do that. The other thing that you can do is you can amend it, but the amendment's got to be germane. And so what that means is you have to look at the purpose of the bill. So let's say, again, this is the fire ant eradication bill, and it's contained in the Agriculture Code, Chapter 52.10. A lot of times people think, well, I've got a bill that wants to amend 52.10 of the Agriculture Code, so I'm going to stick my bill onto the fire ant eradication bill because we're both amending the same area code. I want to get rid of weasels. I'm into weasel eradication. This is the fire ant eradication bill, and so I'm going to bring my weasel eradication amendment to the fire ant eradication bill. Can't do it. The purpose of the bill was fire ant eradication, dealt with fire ants. Now we could talk about how do we get rid of fire ants. We could talk about maybe fire ant education. You can do a lot of things related to fire ants, but you can't necessarily come in and say, you know, we're going to eradicate weasels, even though it would be in the same exact section of code. And I guess I'll say one thing that a lot of people misunderstand is the caption on the bill. Everybody's used to reading, you know, relating to fire ant eradication, right? Something like that. You actually can amend a caption. People think you can't amend a caption. You can. You can amend the caption. It's really common. In fact, it's actually fairly easy to do. That isn't really the limitation. It's the purpose of the bill. So let's say we needed an education component about fire ants to get rid of fire ants. We'd have fire ant eradication and education. Relating to fire ant eradication and education, that'd be fine. But if you started to say, well, it's relating to the eradication of fire ants and weasels, you probably have a problem. I don't know. Hopefully that was slightly helpful.
Other questions?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to correct